Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Muharram Mubarak. Happy Islamic New Year. But also, unlike some New Year celebrations, within Islam, this corresponds with a tragic event which occurred 1400 years ago. So, for a lot of Muslims, they'll be remembering the events of Karbala and the immense sacrifice of Imam Hussein and his companions. And this is, of course, a painful memory for both Sunni and Shia Muslims alike. Some people, because within the Shia community, they obviously focus quite strongly on the Ahlul Bayt, upon Imams Ali, Hassan, Hussein, upon their family. But, you know, some Sunnis forget that actually these are very important people within the history of Islam as a whole. They are not simply people who are revered by Shia Muslims. And our scholarship, our tradition of Islam, our teachings, they also come from the Ahlul Bayt. And these people are our heroes. They are not simply, for one sect of Islam. And of course, what was Imam al-Hussein and his companions doing? What were they doing 1400 years ago? What was the situation that caused them to take action, which was actually simply a group of them walking from one place to another place within the desert? I mean, some people say it was a battle of Karbala. But if we're talking about battles, we're talking about a very small group of lightly armed people who were mostly Imam Hussein and his family, with a few of his friends who supported him and his claim to the caliphate. But, you can't call that a battle. It is a mistake to do so. I mean, what was he standing up for? Well, in case anybody forgets, he was the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, and not just any, he was the beloved grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, both Imams Hassan and Hussein. There is a hadith within Sunni sources which talks about how much the Prophet Muhammad loved them. And also, the Prophet Muhammad was aware that something tragic would happen to both of them in the future. And it is sad in a way, when we read this account, and it's a sad indictment of human nature that we were gifted with the great blessings of the Prophet Muhammad, the revelation of the Quran, this beautiful inspiration and guidance on how we should live our lives. And then what happened? Tyranny took a hold. Tyranny took a hold upon the community of Muslims. In the name of the Prophet Muhammad and the deen that he established, people were doing things which were against the very spirit, tradition, and guidance of those teachings that the Prophet Muhammad gave to his community. And this is one of the biggest tragedies. It is the biggest tragedy within the history of Islam. And what were Imams Hassan and Hussein trying to do? And also Imam as-Sajjad, who wrote the Treatise of Rights, which is a very early treatise on human rights. They were seeking to do nothing more than to remind Muslims of what the Prophet Muhammad taught what was the real Islam. This is what they were upholding. Forget Sunni and Shia for a minute. This is something that happened after those events. People think that the Shias were the group who were with Imam Hussein, and the Sunnis were the group that were with Muawiyah. No, this is an oversimplification, and it's a misunderstanding, because Sunni and Shia, as we understand them now, came about later. And the Ahlul Bayt are just as important within a traditional Sunni Islam as they are within Shia Islam. So this is a wrong understanding. But there was clearly things that were going wrong within the establishment during the time of Imam Hussein. And whatever anybody says about Muawiyah, you'll get some people who say that, you know, he had his reasons for taking certain actions within the Sunni community, and you'll have within both Sunni and Shia communities people who absolutely condemn Muawiyah and say what he did was unforgivable. Whatever your views on Muawiyah, there is no doubt on the fact that he called for the killing of Imam al-Hussein. He sent his army to confront the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who was not just a grandson of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but a great scholar of Islam, who was an heir of the teachings and tradition of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. I mean, you know, think about it. You know, if you've got family and you have grandparents, grandchildren and grandparents, they spend a lot of time together. The access that Imams Hassan and Hussein would have had to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as well as to their father, Imam Ali, who the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said was the gate of knowledge. So in terms of scholarship, in terms of the position which they held within Islam, as teachers of Islam, it is tremendous, and everybody takes from them. Everybody, whether they are Sunni or Shia, everybody takes from them. And if you doubt that, look at your teachers and look at where they got their teachings from. It won't take long before you'll find Imam al-Jafar as-Sadiq, who was, of course, an inheritor of Imams Ali, Hassan, and Hussein. So whether you are Sunni or Shia, you are taking your teachings from the Ahlul Bayt. And I'm not discounting the other great teachers who were not in the family of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. Maybe if there is a difference between Sunni and Shia, it is that within the Sunni tradition, we do give much more respect and emphasis upon those who were outside the family of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who also inherited from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and were great teachers within Islam. But irrespective, you know, within both branches of Islam, the Ahlul Bayt are teachers who we take our teachings from. And that is not something which is a cause for division between Sunni or Shia. And anybody who tells you that is not aware. And we should be careful of ignorance. And if we are ignorant about stuff, we should look into it, research it, and find out. And we should also consider what would have been the situation if it weren't for Imam al-Hussein taking the stance that he took, and those who stood with him, those martyrs who in a few days' time, 1400 years ago, were very cruelly, whose lives were very cruelly taken. And why? Just to establish, just to keep the power within the hands of the people who were holding it at the time. What are the reasons? It was all about politics. Even if we take the position that Muawiyah was acting as any ruler would have done to a challenge to his authority, that's about politics. If Muawiyah and his people were sincere to the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, how could they have taken those actions? How could any of you listening to me now have taken a decision, and regardless what branch of Islam you belong to, how could any of you have taken a decision to have the grandson, the beloved grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, harassed, never mind attacked or killed? Who would have made such a decision? For sure, anybody who makes a decision like that, their faith and understanding of Islam has to be in question. It is questionable. So, I mean, people who they indulge in this kind of sectarian politics, be careful of what you're doing, because you are talking against people, or I was going to say who are the heirs of tradition. It depends who you're attacking, but even if you're attacking modern day scholars within the other branch of Islam, you are still attacking people who are the students of the people whom you love, even if they have different understandings. So a much better way would be to have dialogue, would be to seek to understand the beliefs and positions of the people within the other branch of Islam. We certainly shouldn't be seeking to create division, because division is never a good thing, especially division which is hateful division. If it's just you belong to a different group, you have no problem with the other group, but you have a difference of opinion, and that's why you're in a different group. That's fine, no problem with that. But if you hate, doesn't matter whether you're Sunni, Shia, claiming to be Sufi. Certainly, I'm saying claiming to be Sufi because if you hate, there's a big question on that. Sufism is about love. And I've seen it even within Sufi tariqas. In the past 20 years, I've been in the Naqshbandi tariqah, and I've seen people, they talk against other sheikhs, even within the same tariqah, let alone other tariqahs. I mean, I'm not talking about the sheikhs themselves. The sheikhs usually don't do this because they're sheikhs. They understand if you start doing that, it's a very bad thing. At the very least, it's bad adab. The very least. But I mean, once people start saying that people are outside of Islam, this is dangerous territory. The Prophet Muhammad warned strongly. He said that if one Muslim calls another Muslim a kafir, one of them definitely is. And if it's not the one being called, it's the one who is calling. In other words, if the person who is being called a kafir is not a kafir, the one who is calling him a kafir is a kafir. So we have to be very careful. It's fine to disagree. We can disagree all we want, no problem with that. Everybody's entitled to their understanding. But One thing is disagreeing. One thing is saying that people are outside of Islam. This, you know, if we wonder what happened 1400 years ago, I mean, this was all about power and tyranny. And Imam al-Hussein and his supporters were standing up against that tyranny and saying, no, enough is enough. You are destroying the religion, the deen that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ brought to our community. You are destroying it. And so if that was true 1400 years ago, do not think it is any different now. Anyone who is spreading hate is destroying Islam. Anyone. In the past, I myself have criticized certain stances of certain individuals, certain statements of certain individuals. I've even criticized certain groups, but I have not said that those people are kafirs. I've simply criticized what they said and said that this needs to be reconsidered, or it needs to be thought about, or it is not correct the way they're presenting it, according to how I've been taught and according to my understanding. It's fine to do that. I don't hate any of these people. Even people I've very strongly disagreed with, I don't hate them. Because Imam Ali, he said that, you know, if someone is everybody is your brother or sister. If they're not your brother or sister in faith, they are still your brother and sister in humanity. We all belong to the same human family. So even if we hold different beliefs, even if somebody is a Hindu or a Jew or an atheist, they are still our brother or sister in humanity. They're still a human being. And the way of Islam is you treat them as a human being, whoever they are. Imam al-Hussein stood up for these humanitarian teachings of Islam. He stood up for the rights of those who were being oppressed. For he himself was being oppressed and his family were being oppressed. He understood what it was to be oppressed, as did his descendants. And there is no oppression within Islam. The Quran, I'm not saying there aren't Muslims who oppress other people. There are, sadly. But there is no oppression within Islam. Let me be clear on that. The Quran speaks very strongly against oppression and against tyranny. After all, what was Fir'aun? You think if the Pharaoh of ancient Egypt, who was the leader in the time when the children of Israel were there, if he had been a just and fair leader who guaranteed the human and civil rights of all his people, including the children of Israel, do you think that Allah would have sent Moses and said that you have to remove the children of Israel from the grip of Pharaoh? Why? Why was Musa alayhi salam sent to the Pharaoh? To free his people from oppression. Then you have Nimrud, who was oppressing Ibrahim and his community. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks out very strongly against oppression in the Quran. There is no oppression within Islam. Sure, there are sinful Muslims who oppress people, but they are sinful. They are going against the teachings of Islam. They are not following them. Imam al-Hussein was reminding people of this, for he saw in his time oppression returning. He saw corruption becoming rampant within the land. And he was reminding people this is not the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's not the way that as Muslims we should be conducting our lives. If it wasn't for Imam al-Hussein making this stand, who is to say what would have become of Islam? Without this powerful reminder that he paid so dearly for, things could have just been tyrannical. Islam would, as we understand it today, would have been destroyed. It was the movement started by Imam al-Hussein, that started movements within Islam, some of which went through the Shia branch, some of which went through the Sunni branch. But these movements kept true the spirit of Islam and established that within Muslim communities wherever they went. So yes, you still had, because human beings are fallible, human beings are weak. You still had corruption, you still had the problems which you get within any human society. But at the same time, you had a strong movement within each of these communities, reminding people what the real Islam is, reminding people that Islam is the way of love and devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam is treating your brothers and sisters within our human family as brothers and sisters within our human family, whoever they may be. Islam is hospitality. It's not letting anybody be thirsty or hungry. Muhammad said this, that you shouldn't even go on Hajj if there's someone who is suffering within your street. You should help them first. This was the example of the Prophet Muhammad. Yet when Imam al-Hussein was in Kabbalah, he was denied even water. Can you imagine? In the middle of the hot desert, being thirsty, being denied access to water. How the army that was opposing him thought they were following Islam when they did that, I have no idea. I have no idea. I don't know how they justified that to themselves. And we still see it today, people who claim to be Muslims, and they do the very opposite of what the Prophet Muhammad taught, what the Quran teaches. Some of them have committed terrorist atrocities in the name of our religion, killing loads of innocent people. And this isn't from Islam. Can't deny that the misguided and crazy fools who did it were claiming to be Muslims and thought they were in some way. Can't deny that. That's an unfortunate reality. But they were certainly very far from the teachings of the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad. You can't see it in what they were doing at all. Just as it was when Imam Ali confronted the Khawarij, and Imam al-Hussein stood up against the tyranny within his time. These things resurface. And like I said, if we see from the Quran, this is an ongoing thing. It's not something which it started with Imam Hussein. Because if you look at Moses during the time of Pharaoh, Moses was standing up against the tyranny of the Pharaoh. Jesus, he was standing up against the tyranny within his time. He stood up against the tyranny of the priesthood that was, basically bought out by the Roman Empire and working against the Jewish people within his time. A different tyranny, but it was still, you see a thread that runs through. And this is why today, when we think about the events of Muharram, 1400 years ago, we should also look at the situation that we are facing at the moment, where many draconian measures have been brought in order to ostensibly was to fight COVID. Now, I'm not against vaccination. I'm double vaccinated. And a lot of it I'll go along with to a point. I understand. But we should also write to our MPs and question them when they bring in legislation which seems that it's going to be going on for a very long time, and it's continuing to infringe upon people's civil liberties. I mean, it's one thing to ask people to provide proof of vaccination when they're flying from one country to another country, but quite another when they're asked to provide that to go into a cafe or a club and show that every single time. I'm concerned about that. I don't want to say too much because it is political, but we should be aware, because Imam al-Hussein, what was he standing up against? He was standing up against tyranny. And some of the measures which have been brought in response to the COVID pandemic are rather strong. And they do seem to infringe upon our civil liberties. It's one thing for a short space of time, but if this goes on over the next, how many years, we don't know. I mean, when's the limit? We should question our MPs on these measures, and also just observe and watch and educate ourselves what's going on, because democracy only works when you have an educated citizenry. And also be careful what you read and what you listen to on the internet, because someone sent me something the other day that suggested that the coronavirus was a virus created in an Israeli laboratory, and that a Japanese professor supposedly said this. The Japanese professor actually came out and wrote a statement. He was incredibly upset that his name had been used to make up a story that was actually fraudulent and false. The COVID-19 was not made in an Israeli laboratory. And we know from what has been discovered that this started within Wuhan in China, where, there was certain laboratory there as well. Whether or not it came from it is, well, I'll let people investigate. But it definitely wasn't from an Israeli laboratory. And this is just nonsense that people have been spreading on platforms such as WhatsApp. So be careful. You know, I mean, it only took a simple Google search to find the professor's statement where he said that this is not what he said at all, and he was upset by it. Why don't people do that? You've got access to this technology now. Use it, but use it in a good way. I mean, don't just forward things on that people have sent you on WhatsApp or Telegram or some other platform without checking out the information first and seeing if there's any credibility to it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that if someone brings us a report, that we must check if it's true or not before we act upon it. Otherwise, we might do something which we regret. Now, we are living in very, very challenging times when it comes to information, because there is so much disinformation that is around us at the moment. And some of it even coming from mainstream platforms. But at the same time, if you check things out, if you research them and look for credible sources, I mean, such as that professor's statement from his university on his university website, that is a credible piece of information. That's not just some, something that's made up. Because you can check it's the right website. It really is the university website. It really is the professor's statement. Well, obviously, that's much more reliable than something that's been circulated on WhatsApp that you don't know who wrote it, where it's come from, but it's patenting itself as a news article when it isn't. So be careful, check things out. But there is enough information out there that we can find out a fair amount of what's going on around us. I mean, to get 100% of the truth in this time is very difficult. But we can at least check things out enough that we can avoid the worst of the disinformation and have a balanced view of things. And it's a duty upon us as Muslims. It's actually a duty upon us because Allah has given us that duty within the Quran to check things out before we accept or believe them, and especially before we forward them onto 100 or 200 or more of our friends. Otherwise, then we become part of that disinformation. When we know something's true and we've checked it out, then we might want to circulate it. But check things out first. Don't just circulate things until you've checked them out. And even if it conforms with your biases, this is another thing to be careful of. You might think that people in a certain group are responsible for certain things, or from a certain country, but it isn't necessarily the case. Just because you have a bias towards that, you have to check that. Historically, within journalism, before the mess that we found ourselves in over the past couple of decades, journalists were taught to check the sources of what they're doing, and not just journalists, historians as well, and make sure that the information that you have, it's accurate information. Even if it goes against your own bias, check it first. Because your bias could be wrong. You might personally dislike a certain group of people. And because you personally dislike a certain group of people, you think that they are in the wrong. Whereas when you actually check out the facts, you might find that they are not responsible for some of the things that you thought they're responsible for. Or you might find that you were right and they are, but you have to check it first. You can't just go on your bias and think that, yes, well, those people have did something else and they must be responsible. Because your thinking that is just your thinking that. It's not a reality. It's not a fact. When the great Imams of Hadith were collecting the Hadith, they actually discarded about 90% of the Hadith reports that were given to them. They had to, because there was no basis for them. When they checked out the information and questioned more the people who had access to these Hadith, they found that, some of them were not accurate and others were more accurate. The ones they thought were more accurate, they recorded in the Hadith collections of Bukhari and Muslim and the others that we have today. But there were 90% that were rejected. So, we've got 10%. You imagine how much disinformation was around about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his companions, that the compilers of Hadith had to reject 90% of it. And even as big as these books are today, that's only 10% of what they were hearing. And even within that 10%, we have Hadiths categorized as Safi and other Hadiths categorized as daif, as weak, probably fabricated. Even within that 10%. But they rejected 90% that they were certain were fabricated. Just think about that for a moment. And we are living in such a time where a lot of the information that's coming to us through the media, through social media, through conversations with our friends and community, is false information. It's not reliable information. So we have to return to the guidelines that were established when they were collecting the Hadith and check if the narrations and the things that we're hearing now are really accurate or not. For sure, if we don't do that, we will be misguided. And the whole point of Islam is hidayah. It's guidance, to be on guidance. Well, if we do that with our deen, surely you will want to do that with other things and make sure that the information that you're acting upon from what you've heard in news or from dietary information of what's healthy and what's not healthy, and other such information, that information is reliable and accurate. You have to do research to do that. I realize we're all busy people and, it's limited what time we have to that. But with modern tools like Google, we can, and I don't mean just to promote one search engine, Bing, Yahoo, all of the different, search engines, all the, online things. It's like we have access to information, but make sure that you check what that website is. Is that website produced by a university that is reliable, or a group that is reliable that does their research? Does that have notes within it as well if it's something which is more academic? Does that have links to where they got their information from if it's a news article? Look at things from different perspectives. I realize you're all busy people, so how much time that any of us can give to that is one thing. But then if we can't give time to that, we shouldn't be passing information upon to other people. Because otherwise we become part of a process of causing confusion and disinformation within our communities. This is where fitna comes from. And then people start acting upon things. And if someone is your friend and trusts you, and you've passed some information upon to them, and that information turns out to be false, and they then act upon that information which was false because they trusted you. And it's something I'm very conscious of all the time, because I have social media channels, I have a website, I do these broadcasts. I have to be careful what I say and make sure it's fairly reliable. I do my best to make sure it's as reliable as I can be. And if I don't know about something, I try not to say much on that. and direct people towards where they can get information on it, whichever the topic or subject is. You know, traditionally, scholars of Islam, they would sooner say they do not know rather than give a false piece of information. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's quite another thing to say that you know when you don't know. And to claim that you have knowledge which you do not have. You have to be sure of what you're saying before you do that. Otherwise, you'll undoubtedly pass on some information to people that is not accurate information. And even when you're diligent, it can happen from time to time. And if you do, as I have done in the past, on occasion, I have made a mistake, I apologize for it and give the correct information. But I tried not to do that, because if I do that, I'm misguiding people. And I don't want to be misguiding anybody. Allah is my witness, and Allah will question me. And I don't want it on my conscience that someone has acted upon something which was not accurate. And yet I still receive these messages from people that come in my WhatsApp that even a cursory glance I know is not accurate. And even if a person doesn't have the whatever I've learned, so that they might not see so quickly that that is false information, it doesn't take much for them to do a search and find the information. We've all got access to this computer technology now. And although there's disinformation on it, if we discerning and we can check good sources, it doesn't take much to work out what is nonsense. But I see it all the time. I have done over the past 20 years. Even before that, I saw it. But, you know, I'm talking as a Muslim over the past 20 years. And Muslims have circulated this stuff to me. But we really have to be careful of this, because it causes great harm. I've said enough there. It is actually Maghrib time. So before I do the Dhikr, I'm going to pray my Maghrib Salah, and I will be back. I will be back very shortly. I don't want to delay Maghrib Salah, and I'm sure many of you want to read it as well. So I will be back live within the next maybe 10 minutes, inshallah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله 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 سمع الله 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 السلام عليكم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح كقامت الصلاة كقامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. أستغفر الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب عليه. أستغفر الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب عليه. أستغفر الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم وأتوب عليه. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام وإليك يرجع السلام. حين ربنا بالسلام وركنا دار السلام. وركت ربنا واتريت يا ذو الجلال والإكرام. لا إله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير. سمينا وأتينا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. على رسولنا الصلوات. أستغفر الله سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإلهكم إله واحد لا إله إلا هو الرحمن الرحيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. من الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. صدق الله العظيم. سبحان الله. على نعمة الإسلام وشرف إيمان دائما الحمد لله. على نعمة الإسلام وشرف تعالى شنو لا غيب الله أكبر. الله أكبر كبيرا والحمد لله كثيرا وسبحان الله بكرة وأصيلا. لا إله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو على كل شيء قدير. سبحان ربي الأعلى وفاق. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to broadcast. So it's just the timing in the UK now. It's the days are slowly starting to draw in. It won't be very much for another couple of months, but they're starting to draw back in. So it's just turned Maghrib time now. So obviously had to do my Salah. Let's start the Dhikr. Before we start the Dhikr, then we check our intentions.
نويت العبين نويت الحسنى نويت القهوة نويت الاعتكاف نويت السلوك نويت الرجعة لله تعالى في هذا الجميع. Worship your Lord until He grants you certainty. We begin the Dhikr with the Kalama Shahada. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. We seek Allah's forgiveness with the recitation of Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullah, 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 Astaghfirullah. Astaghfirullahazim alladhi la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum wa akbar alayhi innahu huwa at-tawwabur rahim. Ya musabib al-asbab, ya mufati al-abwab, ya muqallibu qulubi wal-absar, ya al mutakhayyir, ya ghayathu mustakhayathin, ya hayyu ya qayyum, ya dhul jalali wal ikram, wa turidu amri Allah, inna Allaha basiran bil-ibad, Rabbi tashrifa. Direct your heart to the heart of your Sheikh. فاتحة الشريفة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صلوات الشريفة. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم. 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 أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح شريفا ألم نصر لك صدرك ووضعناك وزرك الذي أنقض ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعناك وزرك الذي عنك وذرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإنما العسر يسرا إنما العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب ولذا ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا وزرك الذي عنك وذرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإنما العسر يسرا إنما العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب ولإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا وزرك الذي عنك وذرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإنما العسر يسرا إنما العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب ولإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا وزرك الذي عنك وذرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإنما العسر يسرا إنما العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب وإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا وزرك الذي عنك وذرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإنما العسر يسرا إنما العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب ولإلى ربك فارغب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا وزرك الذي عنك وذرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك فإنما العسر يسرا إنما العسر يسرا فإذا فرغت فانصب ولإلى ربك فارغب إخلاص الشريفة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل والله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الفاتحة الشريفة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين صلوات الشريفة بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم 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 أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي خاديتني من أمك ولمتني من توالي حديث فاتر السماوات والأرض أنت ولي في الدنيا والآخرة توفاني مسلما ولكني بالصالحين آمنا بالله صدق الله العظيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إلا الشرف نبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وأصحابه الكرام وإلى واهي أنبياء ومرسلين وقدم إسرائيل وإلى إمات أبواب وإلى مشيخنا في تركة نقشبندية تيارية قصة لذلك وجدان الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. فلمنه لا إله إلا الله 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 محمد رسول الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد النبي الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد النبي الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد الحبيب الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد الحبيب الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد الشفيع الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد الشفيع الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد الشفيع الله عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله محمد المصطفى عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله محمد المصطفى عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله 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 محمد الرحمة للعالمين عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله محمد الرحمة للعالمين عليه الصلاة لا إله إلا الله 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 حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم إلا شرف نبي صلى وآله وصحبه الكرام وإلا واهي سائر سنتين وصدقيون الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Remembrance of Allah. Allah, 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 Allah. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا قوة إلا بالله العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Hak, 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 hey, 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 hey. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الله الله حق 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 الله الله هي الله الله هي الله الله هي الله الله هي Allahu Allah hey, 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 Allah hey ya Qayyum, 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 Allah hey ya Qayyum. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Yahoo, Yahoo, Yadai. Yahoo, Yahoo, Yadai. Yahoo, Yahoo, Yadai. Allah, Yahoo, Yadai. Yadaim, 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 Ya Allah. Yadaim, 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 Ya Allah. Ya Halim, Ya Halim, Ya Halim, Ya Allah. Ya Halim, Ya Halim, Ya Halim, Ya Allah. Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Allah. Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Hafiz, Ya Allah. Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Allah. Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Allah. Ya Grafa, Ya Grafu, Ya Grafa, Ya Grafu, Ya Grafa, Ya Grafu, Ya Grafa, Ya Grafu, Ya Sata, Ya Fata, Ya Sata, Ya Fata, Ya Sata, Ya Fata, Ya Sata, Ya Fata. Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Allah. Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Allah. Ya Mu'in, Ya Mu'in, Ya Mu'in, Ya Allah. Ya Mu'in, Ya Mu'in, Ya Mu'in, Ya Allah. Ya Mughith, Ya Mughith, Ya Mughith, Ya Allah. Ya Mughith, Ya Mughith, Ya Mughith, Ya Allah. Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Allah. Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Allah. Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Rahim, Ya Karim, Ya Rahim, Ya Karim, Ya Rahim, Ya Karim, Ya Rahim, Ya Karim. Ya Hannan, Ya Mannan, Ya Hannan, Ya Mannan, Ya Hannan, Ya Mannan, Ya Hannan, Ya Mannan, Ya Dayyan, Ya Subhan, Ya Dayyan, Ya Subhan, Ya Dayyan, Ya Subhan, Ya Dayyan, Ya Subhan. Ya Subhan, Ya Sultan, Ya Subhan, Ya Sultan, Ya Subhan, Ya Sultan, Ya Subhan, Ya Sultan. Ya Aman, Ya Aman, Ya Aman, Ya Allah. Ya Aman, Ya Aman, Ya Aman, Ya Allah. Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Allah. Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Salam, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Salawatu sharifa. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد وسلم 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 صل يا رب وسلم على جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين والكلين أجمعين والحمد لله يا رب العالمين على شرف نبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. على أشرف نبينا سيدنا محمد الصلوات على أفضل نبينا سيدنا محمد الصلوات على أخمال نبينا وسيدنا محمد الصلوات صلوات الله وملائكته وأنبيائه ورسوله وجميع خلقه على محمد وعلى آل محمد عليه وعليهم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته ورجاء تبارك وتعالى أن تدين شابه رسول الله أجمعين وأن تبينا بهم بإحسان ونعمة مجتدين أمدين ولعلماء متقين ولأولياء الصالحين والمشايخنا بتلك نقشبنديات عالية قد صلوات اللهم زكيا ونعونا تعالى درة مباركة ودواه تعالى لنا من بركاتهم وفيداتهم دائما والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وعلى وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Oh Allah, we ask you to shower your blessings upon the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his noble family, his noble ancestors and his noble descendants, and all the previous prophets and their noble ancestors and their noble descendants, and upon the Sahaba Ikram, the Ahlul Bayt, the Khilaf al-Rashideen, the ulama, the awliya, and especially our Sheikh Sufi Abdullah and the Mulana Sheikh Nazim, Ya Allah, raise their stations and in your divine presence and bless their souls for all eternity. Ya Allah, shower your blessings upon my beloved father and Sheikh Sharif Hidayatullah and all of the Wali Songo and Sheikh Yusuf, Sheikh Adang Badruddin, Gusto, Sheikh Dhikr. Bless their souls and raise their stations in your divine presence. Ya Allah, shower your blessings upon our mothers and our fathers, our brothers and our sisters, our aunties and our uncles, grandparents, our nieces and nephews, and especially upon our beloved wives or husbands, children, our future descendants. Ya Allah, grant our families to be under your divine protection and blessings. Grant us forgiveness for our many sins. Grant us forgiveness for not thanking you enough or thanking you in a way which is worthy, Ya Allah. We are not capable of thanking you in a way that is worthy for all the many blessings you grant to us. Forgive us for being ungrateful ones at times. Forgive us for being not as appreciative as we should be, Ya Allah. Not recognizing things that we should recognize as much as we should, Ya Allah. For letting down our guard at times, letting our nafs be too active, Ya Allah. And Ya Allah, we pray you grant us never to be alone with our nafs even for a moment, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Bless everyone who is tuning into these broadcasts, Ya Allah, and their families, their communities. Bless everyone in the Naqshbandi tariqat, in Nahdlatul Ulama, in Muhammadiyah, in all the Muslims around the world, Ya Allah. All the different communities of our human family around the world, Ya Allah. We ask your blessings and forgiveness for everyone, Ya Allah. We ask your guidance, Ya Allah. Especially in these times, Ya Allah, when there's so many disasters and tests and difficulties and disinformation, Ya Allah. We ask you more than ever to be under your divine protection, forgiveness and blessing, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Make things easier for us, Ya Allah. And grant us to be under your divine protection at all times, Ya Allah. Grant us to have just governments, Ya Allah. Just leaders who are honest and fair, people who are trustworthy ones in authority over us, Ya Allah. And grant us that when this is the case, that we are also obedient ones, Ya Allah. But also grant us to be under good government, Ya Allah. Grant us to be under good administrations, people who are genuine and sincere, Ya Allah. And if the people in our governments are not at the moment, Ya Allah, we pray you forgive and guide them, Ya Allah. Turn their hearts towards you, Ya Allah. Grant them hidayat. Grant them light in their hearts. Grant them a heart, Ya Allah. Grant them an understanding of what's good and what is best for societies, Ya Allah. And grant that they do be just rulers over us, Ya Allah. But rulers come from among the people, Ya Allah. And we ask that you guide us all, Ya Allah. And bless all of us. And forgive us, Ya Allah. And inspire us to live on this world in a way which is best, Ya Allah. Best for human family, but also for all the other communities of living creatures that we interact with them on one level and depend upon in one level or another, Ya Allah.
We ask that we are living in harmony with them, Ya Allah. And we know at the moment that this is not the case. So we pray that you grant us the inspiration and guide our actions, that we implement things that will bring our relationships back into harmony with all the other communities of living creatures with which we share this earth, as well as with all the other communities of human beings on this earth. Ya Allah, we pray especially today for those people who sacrificed everything at Karbala, Ya Allah. We pray for Imam Hussein and his family and his companions. And we ask that you raise their stations in your divine presence and never let their memory be forgotten, and bring something of their zeal for the true spirit of Islam, and also the true spirit of Islam itself, into our hearts and our understanding and practices of Islam, Ya Allah, that we may be true Muslims, Ya Allah, people who are truly submitted ones to you, Ya Allah, and people who care about our human family and about other living creatures, people who have a heart and are not tyrants, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, spare us from ever becoming tyrants or oppressors over anybody, Ya Allah, and spare us from ever being under oppression. Ya Allah, forgive us. Forgive me if I've said anything wrong. Forgive me if I said anything wrong in my Sohbet or in my prayer, Ya Allah. And Ya Allah, thank you for anything, any inspiration, any good things which you send and grant me, Ya Allah. Please forgive and bless everybody in my family and everybody who tunes into these, Ya Allah. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-azim. Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم. يا الله يا الله يا الله إلى حضرات النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وآله وصحبه الكرام، وإلى أرواح سوي أنبياء ومرسلين وقدماء الشرعين، وإلى أرواح مشركين في طريق نقشبندية عالية كستاني روحي إمام طريق وقوتي كريكا شعبودي نقشبند محمد الويسي البخاري، وإلى مولانا الشيخ عبد الله فايز الدغستاني، وإلى زندبيا، وإلى صوفي عبد الله، وإلى مولانا الشيخ ناسم، وإلى الشيخ أدان بدرودين، وإلى قسطور، وإلى شيخ يوسف، وإلى شيخ شريف هداية الله، وإلى شيخ هشام كباني، وإلى شيخ بادشاه، وإلى شيخ حبيب الله، وإلى شيخ داود، وإلى شيخ محمد، وإلى شيخ نور، وإلى صائوي سنتنا والصديقيون. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. And with that, I bring to a close broadcast today, and Dhikr, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, bless us all, forgive us all. If any of you find these broadcasts useful, please don't forget to subscribe to my Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube channels, and also our website at paulusarmstrong.com. So that you can be kept up to date with latest posts, broadcasts, articles, etc. Assalamu alaikum, Abdul Wadud. I notice you tuning in a lot. Allah bless you, brother. Allah bless you. Okay, I'm going to sign off now because it is late now, and I also need to have something to eat. So I wish you all the very, very best. And please don't forget to join us tomorrow for Friday Reflections. And have a lovely evening if you're in the United Kingdom or wherever you are in the world. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Oh, alhamdulillah, I'm glad to hear it. Any good in it is from Allah and the Prophet Muhammad and through the blessings of my sheikhs. And please forgive me for the mistakes, any mistakes on my own. Okay, assalamu alaikum.